year 1492 symbolizes the year two separate worlds collided, one filled with highly functional indigenous civilizations and the other of a large collection of European powers. Time period 1 is an exploration of the first interactions among these two groups. As many settlers arrive, the events in which take place will determine the dynamics and conditions of future societies within the newly explored continent of North America.
1492, Christopher Columbus attempted to reach Asia by sailing west from Europe. Christopher Columbus mistook the New World for India, which triggered the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange symbolized the mixing of Old World with the New World. By definition, the Columbian Exchange is the trade of animals, culture, plants, and diseases. Many of Native Americans who had gladly welcomed the Europeans were overcome by these foreign diseases. 1393 Doctrine of Discovery. The Doctrine of Discovery was a document issued by the Pope which validated Spain's right to colonization of new lands. The Doctrine of Discovery dictated that people who were not of Christian faith could not obtain or inhabit land. 1494 Treaty of Tordesillas. The treaty divided the territories found by Christopher Columbus. Large portions of the Americas went to Spain. Portugal received large portions of Africa as compensation.
In 1503, the first encomiendas were granted to conquistadores. The encomienda system was established to help create a peaceful and beneficial relationship between the natives and the Spanish.
You will provide labor for me.
Okay.
I will protect you.
Okay.
You are my slave now.
Okay.
In which the Spanish provided protection from the other tribes and the natives, in turn, provided their labor. In 1512, the laws of Burgos were passed, which was an attempt to help regulate the relations between the natives and the Spaniards as the dynamic began to shift to one of slavery and exploitation. In 1519, Hernán Cortés invaded Mexico, and the Spanish seized the Aztec Empire and robbed its capital. In 1525, the Atlantic slave trade was put into action. This launched a new set of peoples into the hierarchy that had been established with the introduction of the New World, and was the first recorded voyage from Africa to the Americas.
1532, Francisco Pizarro invaded Peru. Incas were conquered by the Spanish. 1540, Francisco Coordenado's expedition was an attempt to enforce culture and religious belief among natives, in search of gold that would bring more power and wealth to the country of Spain.
Gold? Gold? Gold?
Excuse me.
1565, St. Augustine established the first permanent Spanish settlement. 1555, tobacco arrived in Europe. Shipping and trading of agricultural products symbolized the mixing of the Old World with the New World.
In the year of 1587, the lost colony of Roanoke was established. It was intended to be the first permanent English colony, but was abandoned for unknown motives.
Hey guys, I got food. Where did everybody go?
In 1602, there was the Dutch East India Company. This brought economic flourishment through trade to the Dutch Republic. In 1607, the settlement of Jamestown took place. This was the establishment of the first English colony.
Geography and the environment is shown in time period 1 through the exploration of new territories that involve navigation of unexplored lands. The development of a new nation created new relations between what would become America and the European nations that traded, allied, and fought with. Social structures were altered with the arrival of the Europeans who considered the culture dominant to the natives. This new social pyramid would continue to prevail over the next coming centuries.
How did technological advances, large-scale production methods, and opening of new markets encourage the rise of industrial capitalism in the United States? At times, the lack of geographic knowledge and weather conditions made it difficult for settlers to locate and obtain a source of food. With the inclusion of strategies, the settlers began to create large sums of produce by which were sent back to Europe. The influx of food not only significantly increased populations, but also prompted new visions of transcontinental marketing. The development of larger ships in the 16th century allowed for this idea to be enacted, and soon cattle, vegetables, and other items would be shipped across the Atlantic Ocean. The combination of these two advancements allowed for the rise of overseas trade. These measures illustrate similarities to industrialism, as goods were often grown in crops or mass produced, while still maintaining a largely economic standpoint.
The 1552 document written by Bartolomé de las Casas, addressed to the Spanish king, was intended to settle the dispute between the bishop and Dr. Gaines de Sepulveda, discussing the morality of the encomienda system. As we know previously, Bartolomé de las Casas was a Spanish settler who came to the island of Hispaniola in 1502 and largely enforced the idea of the encomienda system. The main idea of this document was intended to showcase that Bartolomé de las Casas defended the existence of the encomienda system within colonial Spanish society. Opposingly, Dr. Gaines argued that native labor was not justified. This document holds much significance because the discussion showcases how, at the very least, some Europeans viewed natives as more than just indentured servants, and also how the dehumanization of these peoples was not entirely accounted for by all settlers.
The author of this document was Francisco Garcia de la Loasa on behalf of King Charles V, and it was addressed and written to Francisco Vázquez de Coronado. This document was written in order to authorize expedition to what is now southwestern America, in which he attempted to find gold and bring natives under Catholic churches. This document presented the idea that subjugation of Native American culture was justified and was the initial step towards centuries worth of attempts to impose upon their own way of living and beliefs. This document is highly significant because it is one of the first written documents that showcase authorization of conquistadores inhabiting and exploring the New World.